this is Sneh. And we run a social enterprise which supports refugee women on their pathway to employment. So we're very much picking up on some of the themes that you guys have already started on, and we actually ran our last programme in Hackney City Farm. So we're even staying true to the Hackney theme. But we are... we're open to anyone from any borough, but we were based in Hackney City Farm. So there are currently around 100,000 refugees living in the UK, and over 50% of refugees are unemployed. It's a pretty staggering statistic, and there are huge challenges facing both refugee men and women accessing the labour market. But unfortunately, refugee women are having an even harder time of it than men, and that's due to a number of cultural and economic factors. And this means that there are lots and lots of refugee women who are living in London, here to kind of start their lives afresh, who are finding themselves very socially and financially isolated. So a year ago, Sneh and I decided that we wanted to set up a programme to try and address this. I'd been working at a homeless hostel where I'd been working with a great number of refugee residents living there, and had been kind of desperately searching for a programme that would address their needs specifically, but couldn't find one. And Sneh had previously been working for the UNHCR as a translator, where she'd become kind of very aware of the challenges facing refugees in their host countries. So we set up the programme over a year ago in May 2016, and since then we've been getting to know women from all around the world to try and kind of understand what challenges they are facing, what struggles they're up against, and how we can help them. And we've also been partnering with charities and building relationships with employers to try and understand what are the current opportunities for training and for employment for refugee women in London. Three big things that we've taken away from our work over the last year are that, firstly, there's a lot of ESOL provision in London. So ESOL is English for speakers of other languages. A lot of funding for government kind of English provision has been cut, and that's a great shame, because obviously that's one of the biggest barriers that is facing refugees finding employment. But there is still quite a lot of ESOL available across the city. However, having sat in on many ESOL classes and having worked with a huge number of refugee men and women who've been through those kind of classes, what we see is that there is a huge kind of chasm between the kind of classroom English that these refugees are learning and the colloquial English that they need to have a conversation with someone from Liverpool who has a thick accent, or someone from, I don't know, North London or South London or whatever it is, and to feel confident kind of having informal conversations and not, you know, silly things like asking for directions or whatever you're taught in those classes. So that's one of the big things that we've taken away. Another huge thing that we've taken away is that although there are training opportunities available to people, it's very rare that there are opportunities which factor in the cost of childcare. And so lots of the women that we work with are here and they have young children and they have no support network. They haven't got grandma or grandpa to look after the kids. They come from really, really low income households. They've got no kind of, they don't even stand a chance of affording childcare. And so while the men are able to go out and kind of do some training and maybe get some work experience and maybe find a kind of entry-level role, women are really being excluded from getting any kind of experience, any kind of access to those opportunities while their kids are below the age of 2. And for a lot of them, they're not even aware that when their children are 2, they can then sign them up for a free 15 hours a week in a local nursery. And so there's a big issue around women who come and then are excluded from getting involved in these training opportunities because of their childcare. And the final thing that we've seen, which I think really touches on what Roxy was speaking about earlier, is that there's a kind of disconnect, certainly with provision from the job centre, from lots of the kind of government into-work schemes, which really don't recognise the intrinsic dependence between emotional well-being and practical knowledge, especially when it comes to women, many of whom have got really low self-esteem and have got confidence issues, not just because they're in a new country without their support network, communicating in a language that they're not familiar with, but because of the experiences that many of them have been through. So I've talked and talked for absolutely ages. I'll pass over to
I'm going to go
program.
quick. As we've learned more about the challenges, the support and the provisions available to the refugee women that we're seeking to support, we have designed our programme iteratively, and that brings us to the programme that we present to you today. So how does it work? We recruit women who have the right to work and refugee status in the UK, and we also ensure that they are actively seeking employment. We put them through a 4-week training programme, which is actually 6 weeks. We put them through a 6-week training programme where they learn the beautiful art of floristry and also are able to practice English, so they're gaining techniques as well as building their confidence. Following this 6-week training programme, they then receive a 4-week work experience placement. They're either running floristry workshops themselves, facilitating beginners, or they are creating large arrangements for events. So that's one thing for you to know, we do events. And further to that, they also, during this 4-week work experience placement, receive one-to-one support from our employment advisor. The purpose of the employment advisor is to enable them to reflect on their personal development over the previous 6 weeks, and also to start exploring opportunities which will in turn hopefully help them look for a job. Throughout this time, they are supported not only with practical skills but also with emotional skills. And following the end of the placement, our employment advisor will either support them into a work placement or refer them on to one of our established employment partners who will then support them on that continued journey to employment. I know that time has run out, so all I'm going to do is ask you to ask us a couple of questions.
So apologies for talking far too long.
So one of the questions I'd like you to ask us is what we want to do with the money. Another one I'd like you to ask us is why we're called Bread and Roses, and then anything else. Thank you.